What's up, guys? LQ here with my out of the theater reaction for Dangerous Creatures. Now, I've seen some reviews of this movie where I heard people say that's a different concept. You know, the idea of somebody kidnapping people and feeding them to sharks, that's new and brings a new twist to the shark genre. Not really. Shark Night? Anybody remember that movie? That movie had a crazy guy kidnapping people and feeding them to sharks and filming it. So this really isn't a new concept. But this was better than Shark Night. This was a lot better than Shark Night. This was tense and edge of your seat. And it treated the sharks in, I wouldn't say, I guess realistic, right? I mean, I don't know how realistic it was, but at least it felt as realistic as possible given what we know about sharks. I mean, there's a scene if you've seen the trailers, you know what the concept is. He kidnaps people, dangles them in a harness, puts them in the water, he chums up the water, and he films them getting eaten by sharks. And so you know the concept. I mean, there's a scene in this movie where someone's in the water and the sharks aren't eating him. So he pulls them out of the water and he decides to try again later. That, for me, is realistic shark behavior. Sharks aren't going to always just come in and attack. Sometimes they will, but not always. So I felt like the sharks were treated in a relatively realistic manner here. The real villain of the movie was Jai Courtney, and he was delightful. I know that a lot of people give Jai Courtney a lot of garbage for not being a great actor or whatever, but I've seen him in a couple roles now where he's just killed it, and this is one of them. I mean, he embodied this character, and he was scary, and he was funny when he needed to be funny, but mostly he was just scary and menacing, and you really understood who he was. And I mean, you didn't know his history or anything like that. You got some of his history, but you didn't really know who he was outside of his goals and what he wanted to do and why he wanted to do them. And that was all you needed. And because that was all that you had, he was scary. Probably a terrible, terrible, terrible comparison, but I'm going to make it. He's scary in the way that Michael Myers is scary. Early Michael Myers, when we didn't know everything about Michael Myers, when we didn't know his whole history, when we just knew that he was evil and he wanted to kill for the sake of evil. That was the way that Jai Courtney was scary here. He was just a bad guy who had an experience with sharks, and because of that experience, he has decided to kill people by using sharks. So overall, this was a fun, tense movie. Not an incredibly high body count and not particularly gory. There was a couple scenes that had some gore in there, had some moments where you're like, ugh, but not particularly gory, not a particularly high body count, but that wasn't really the goal here. The goal here wasn't Carnage Candy. The goal here was to keep you on the edge of your seat and to be cheering for the lead character. The lead character, Zephyr, very endearing, enjoyed the character a lot. Good actress. I'd never heard of her before. Something Harrison. Last name is Harrison. But I'd never heard of her before. I'd never seen her in anything before, but she did a great job embodying the tough final girl. And that's what you like to see in slasher movies. Slasher movies, I know that there's all this talk right now about the strong female in movies these days and all that. But if you go back to the history of serial killer movies and the history of slasher movies, which this is a slasher movie with sharks, if you go back through the history of slasher movies, you always have a strong final girl. There's only rare circumstances where it's a final guy. You know, Nightmare 2, Friday 4, Friday 6. You know, there's certain instances where it's this final guy, but usually it's a final girl. And so this plays right into the popular tropes of serial killer slasher movies. And again, I consider this a serial killer slasher movie where the villain is not using machetes or axes or butcher knives. He's using sharks. This was like I said, very tense, very fun, and mostly a cat and mouse chase type movie, but I had a blast with it. So I definitely recommend seeing Dangerous Creatures, especially if you're into shark movies, but I recommend it if you're into those high intensity thrillers. So good movie, definitely recommend. Have you guys seen it? If so, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. While you're down there commenting, make sure that you subscribe to my channel, and until next time, we'll see you guys later.